This week, I'm going to flip it. I'm going to show you condition 2. Condition 2 is where men who are very masculine are actually more like women. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Year of Living Manly, my year-long project in which I explore what masculinity really is as defined by the people who live it. Very excited to share with you this week the answer to a question I teased last week. And the question was, drumroll, can very masculine men be faithful to their wives? Now, I want you to think about what you believe about the answer to that question. I will share with you very shortly the real answer to that question. But in the meantime, let me just provide some context that I think will be enjoyable. And, weirdly, it was inspired by Twitter. I'm not going to say Twitter inspires a lot of positive things, but this one was great. Eric Anderson on January 14th posted this: "The highest grossing movie from your birth year is how your 2022 will play out." It was a great little game. People were posting all sorts of different things. I think Ghostbusters was one of my favorite, maybe the most appropriate to the spirit of our times. For me, however, the answer was pretty amazing. So 1969, my birth year, is the year that Butch, Cassidy and the Sundance Kid came out. Now, this movie means so much to so many people. To me personally, for reasons that I won't get into, of where it was filmed and what Robert Redford went on to do afterward, naming his ski resort Sundance, which was 40 minutes away from my house. All those kind of cool things I'll leave to one side. I already let them out, sorry. But what I want to focus on actually is not Robert Redford, though he's closer to the camera. It's Paul Newman. So Paul Newman, remarkable actor, of course, incredibly successful, passed away now already in 2008, so 14 years ago it will be. It's amazing to imagine that he's been gone that long, given the mark that he left on our culture and on ethical business practice, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. Anyway, very excited to share with you a story about Paul Newman, and that's where I'm going with this. So, number one, Paul Newman was married to actress Joanne Woodward for 50 years before his passing. She's still alive, I believe 91 years old, and very just incredible duo, the two of them. Now, people like me, and by people like me, I mean people who celebrate marriage and family, we like to talk about Paul Newman because he's a guy who gave us one of the best quotes you really could ever ask for in the world of marriage. And the quote goes exactly like this: "I don't like to discuss my marriage, but what I will tell you something that may sound corny, but which happens to be true. I have steak at home. Why should I go out for hamburger?" Now, it's an endearing quote, and it's wonderful for him to say that for those of us who cherish our marital vows to the degree that so many of us do. In fact, most of us do. Not something that you'll hear in most depictions in modern media. Most marriages are faithful. And evidently, theirs was too, at least at that point. So this is the darker story of the Paul Newman. The reason that was asked of him in 1988, as someone was writing a biography of him, is that a prior sort of unauthorized, scandalous biography of him claimed that he had an affair with an entertainment journalist or a Hollywood journalist, I believe it was, back in the late 60s, during the early years of his marriage to Woodward. So that was never confirmed. It was alleged to be a scandal, and you know how Hollywood works. Who knows at all whether this story is true? What's interesting, though, is that no one can find any other claim that Paul Newman was ever not faithful to Joanne Woodward. He was faithful, but he was, by any account, very masculine. Very masculine. And if you ask the throngs of women who were enthralled by him for decades, they would say, yep, absolutely very masculine man. And yet, here was a man who had not only motive, but opportunity, and chose not to take it. Which brings me to the question, again, that I've promised to answer and haven't done so yet. Can very masculine men be faithful to their wives? Now, for those of you who are new here, this is a data-driven analysis. It's not just me musing on what it means to be a man. I'm a self-confessed 4 out of 5 on the very masculine scale, and that's what I'm trying to change this year. And so I'm going to go explore traditional masculinity, stereotypical masculinity, and then I'm going to be guided by the data. And this is one area where I am proud, after more than 31 years of marriage, to be able to say that I follow the steak and hamburger rule 100%. But am I alone in that? Is it actually the fact that I'm not very masculine that makes me more likely to be that way? Or would I be even more faithful if I were very masculine? I shared this graphic last week, and I'm bringing it back up here to explain, for those of you who are new, how these figures work. So what you're looking at is a survey of 1,567 men and women in the United States that I fielded in March of 2021, majority funded by me as a personal project. There's no corporation involved. There's no anyone who's trying to get anything out of this other than just knowledge. Now, the graphic that you're looking at here was from last week's incredible video, if I say so myself, about the rescue of 13 boys from a cave in North Thailand. Now, the data that I showed last week and that you're looking at here follows a pattern, one of two patterns that I'm going to explore this year. Here I'm trying to illustrate pattern one. Pattern one is, who are very masculine men? They are men taken to an extra manly degree for these kinds of characteristics. And that's why I shared this one last week. This week, I'm going to flip it. I'm going to show you condition two. Condition two is where men who are very masculine are actually more like women than they are all other men. And this, to me, this is the guts of what it is that we're exploring when we explore the very masculine men. And reminder, very masculine men outperform other men in all meaningful dimensions. Career attainment, personal satisfaction with their lives, relationship depth, strength of relationship with their parents and their children, if those things currently apply, all of these things. So being very masculine isn't just about being very masculine. It's about having the benefits of masculinity and making sure your family and your community get the benefits of being very masculine. So let's go forward. I'll share with you the next data point that I came prepared to talk about today. Boy, all this buildup to try to talk about whether or not Paul Newman being very masculine and also being faithful to his wife is an anomaly or not. Okay, ready? Here we go. Very masculine men seek faithful relationships. Today I'm going to share with you two data points. One of them is this one. This is a whole series of items that I give people. I say, imagine your ideal relationship. It's a relationship that's completely fulfilling to you. What would it include? And then I give them descriptions of things, and people say on a scale of 1 to 5 how much they want that thing to be part of it. This item on that list is sexually exclusive. And that implies, obviously, bidirectional exclusivity. Do you want your ideal relationship to be sexually exclusive? The people that say 4 or 5 on the scale of agreement, that's a top 2 box on a 5-point scale, which you see in the footnote there. And that's generally the way I'll present these data. And I apologize again for being a little too data wonky, but I feel like I don't want people to just come back and say, well, that's not what I've seen. Or, well, that's not the way I experience it. Or, that's not my friends. It's kind of great to hear your experience, who you are and what you live like is great to know, but I'm trying to describe reality, not any one of our particular bubbles, not Paul Newman's bubble and not my bubble. So I'm going to express the actual facts, and that's what this whole project is about. Then I'll take those facts and use them in my life. And this is one that I happen to agree with. So the average total and, there it is, total 64% of people consider their ideal relationship would be sexually exclusive. Women are more likely than average, only slightly, 68%, to say that. Men only less likely a little bit, 61%, to say their ideal relationship would be sexually exclusive. Now, you can think about where your numbers are. Like, where would you agree on a 1 to 5 scale with this statement? I'm a 5, 100%, all the way to the side. That's my ideal relationship. It's what I want. I have so much more data to share about that later on, and personal experience as well. But this 68, 61%, this is statistically different. That means that women and men are different from each other on average. Here's where we go. We're going to take that male bar and we're going to break it out into 2 bars. We're going to look at all other men and very masculine men. Ready? All other men, so 1 to 4 on the scale of masculinity, only 56% of them feel like their ideal relationship would be sexually exclusive. Now, here's where we go by the very masculine. If you're ahead of me here, you know I'm talking about this for a reason. You know that the very masculine group is going to be high. But where will they land? They land at 67%. So statistically indistinguishable very masculine men from women. And very masculine men are statistically different from all other men. This is very important. So this is the group 2, the mode 2 that I'm talking about. Mode 1, very masculine men are just what men are, taken to a higher degree. And in this case, this being very masculine means not being like all other men, and instead being more like women. In this case, statistically indistinguishable, 67% and 68%. So this is what their ideal is. Now, if you're cynical, if you're like, well, that doesn't seem right to me, very masculine men aren't like that, very masculine men are alpha males. Oops, did I use that term? We're going to use that next week. Get ready. Well, actually, I'm showing you they're not. But this is what they say they want. But maybe they can't control themselves. They're so manly after all, right? They have no ability to stop themselves. Well, no. I'm going to show you that very masculine men are more faithful than women. At the beginning, I asked you to think about what your bias is. What's your assumption about very masculine men? And here, I hope that either you are right, or I'm about to blow your mind. First thing I'll do is show you the total, and then the basic male and female breakout. And that is 77% of people say that they're always faithful to their sexual partner. 80% of women say that, and 74% of men say that. Now, that difference, although significant, statistically speaking, between men and women, is not dramatic, but it'd be enough that over an entire population it could create some friction, as I think most of us assume that it has and does. And so we're not surprised by that difference. The difference I think you might be surprised by, though, is this next one. When we look at the 59% of men that we call all other men on this chart, 67% of them say that they are always faithful to their sexual partner. That's 2/3. That is meaningfully different from 80% of women. So if you have an average woman connecting to an average man, their expectations of sexual fidelity are going to be different. We already saw that their ideal relationships were different in the last graphic, and now we're seeing here their actual self-disclosed behavior is even more dramatically different, and that's going to cause problems. So when we start saying, well, masculine men are unfaithful, it's not because we're looking at Paul Newman and deriving any actual evidence. It's because we know men who have done this, because many men are telling us that they're not always faithful, but they happen to be more prevalent in the all other men bucket. We go into the very masculine category, and it completely moves the other way. 83% of very masculine men say they are always faithful to their sexual partner, roughly on par with women. So not only did they tell us before that they, in their ideal relationship, seek sexual exclusivity, but that in their actual behavior, they report that they are always faithful to their sexual partner. Now remember, people can lie, and people can also be unaware of future behaviors that they might engage in. So I'm not saying these are actually predictive of actual rates of infidelity, although, remarkably, these numbers line up pretty well with the multiple decades now of research done on infidelity in marriages in the United States. And that infidelity rate is somewhere around 25%. Some people say it's as low as 20, some people as high as 30, but it's a minority. It is a minority of relationships that experience an incident of infidelity. So these numbers are not that far off from the actual long-term behavior that we see in the culture. But what's so fascinating is that the Paul Newmans among us, the very masculine, are always faithful to their sexual partner. So yet another reason for me personally to decide that I need to man up, that I need to be very masculine. Now, first of all, it's easy for me to take this one because I already am that thing. But what I was doing wrong was I was assuming that maybe I already am faithful because I am less masculine. And in fact, I can own it and say I am very masculine because I am very interested in the steak, not the hamburger, to go back to the Newman quote, and that I am building my family and my community. Those are the big themes that you're going to see about the data that I have to share this year, as well as me when I now go try to do things that very masculine men do that I don't do, and I have to stretch myself a bit. I have a few things like this one that are already there. I'm already landed. Check that box. But some other things I've got to stretch. In fact, one of those things I'll be asking for some help in a coming video to figure out what sport I should follow this year and what team I should follow this year. And then I'm probably going to need some personal coaching on how to do that. Trying to be more masculine has already brought benefits to me this year. For example, the reason I'm recording this video on a Sunday afternoon instead of Saturday morning when I had planned is that actually I was getting all ready to sit down and do this yesterday when a friend called and needed some unexpected support to help with something that was meaningful and important. Now, the conundrum I was in was, oh no, I have those 3 hours set aside to work on my masculinity video. And then, in fact, it turns out that I needed to go do the masculine thing, which was to be ready to help people, to benefit my community. And I managed to bring one of my sons into the process as well. So strengthening my family, showing him how to be more masculine as well. All of which is exactly the kind of benefit that my project is hopefully designed to give me and others who are willing and able to follow along. If you are following along, if you are enjoying any of these videos, please like them, please share them. Please start giving me comments about things you would like to know answers to. I might have data on exactly the thing that you're wondering about. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to go out of this video with a little video from yesterday morning, early in the morning. Just thinking about it makes me shiver. You'll see why here in a second. And I'll tee up next week's video in that little, we'll call it a promo. Sure, why not? Until next time, thank you so much. Oh, my lips are frozen. They can't really move very well. Okay, where am I today? I'm in the various neighborhoods around my town. It is 10 degrees outside, a light and lovely snowfall with a little bit of wind, and the rate of humidity, they're saying it's -1 in the feels like category. It doesn't feel like -1 to me. It feels like 4. All right. Question for you this week to ponder while I prepare next week's video. What is an alpha male? And are masculine men alpha? Or are alpha males masculine? I'm going to blow that whole thing wide open. Talk to you next week.